So as a filmmaker, I have never shied away from using whatever the bleeding edge technology was coming down the line. I've always been an early adopter for that sort of thing. But the AI bandwagon was a wagon too far for me, at least at first. You know, I kind of had to get over being pissed off about it, I guess. So T.E. Sanders here. Hope you're all doing well. I want to share a little bit about what my experience was with trying to get AI to do what I wanted it to do as a director and how well that did not go. As I went through that process, I kept a bit of a diary, so I'm going to switch over to the computer, or I'm just going to go down the list and show you guys what I did and what the output of my actions were and how wrong I was about how this stuff works. So before I do that, I want to tell you guys a little bit about what the script was that I was trying to get it to do. So there was a movie I wanted to do a long time ago. It was called Bushido Girls. It was kind of a sort of group of assassins, kind of a ultra-violent Charlie's Angels, I guess would be a good way to put it. And the very first scene in the film was very specific. It was written out. The camera was basically part of the piece. You can think of filmmakers like Wes Anderson or maybe Orson Welles, you know, guys who would use the camera as almost like another character. And that's how this was designed. It was supposed to be where you have an alleyway with some old brick buildings, you know, and this Chevelle Super Sport pulls up, and you've got the two girls in the car. They look like badasses because they are. And the passenger gets out, and she's supposed to walk in front of the car and walk up to the back door. And the way the camera movement is supposed to work is, you know, the camera's locked down, the car drives out, then it cuts to them in the car. Now this is supposed to be all one shot where she gets out and the camera just floats and turns and follows her while she's walking. And then as soon as she starts to walk in the door, the camera starts moving up the side of the building until it stops at the top floor. And there's a guy looking down. He sees them, and then he backs up into the dark, and the camera's supposed to come into the room with him. And then he's scrambling around trying to figure out what he's going to do because he knows someone's coming up. Well, that never happened in my AI attempt, especially not the part where once it gets into the room with him, she's come up the stairs, the camera moves over, and so you got a hallway. Well, actually, I guess for the cameras, this thing's backwards. So you got the hallway on one side and the guy on the other side in the room, and the camera is in there and supposed to move across until the dividing line between the room and the hallway is right in the middle. So you end up with two shots, and it shows the girl coming up the hallway and the guy in the room and how he's reacting to her approaching the door. And then she leans in and listens and calls to him through the door, and he's scrambling. He grabs a phone, does all kinds of things. He won't open the door, of course. And so she kicks it open. As soon as she kicks it open, he just jumps out the window. So that's the entire scene happening while the camera is split down the middle and looking at both things at the same time. So I know I might have bitten off more than I could chew because that's a lot of complex stuff. And it took me weeks just to get the initial shot of the car driving up. So we can just get into that now. So I'm going to switch over to that. All right, let's go. Okay, so the first thing I did before anything else is I needed to find out what kind of products there were for what I was trying to do. Now, there's been a couple of years where I've done a lot of image generation. I've never done video generation, but image generation, and I just use Comfy UI for that. But for this, I wanted to try to use some things like Seadance, which had just come out, Seadance 2.0, and Kling 3.0, which I could not do on my local machine. So I skipped that and just went to Claude and I talked to Claude about what I wanted to do. And it helped me to narrow things down to what might work for my purposes. So this led me to a few different things. One of them was Higgs field and another one was FreePik. There were a handful of other things, but going back and forth, I finally landed on FreePik, though there was something by a YouTuber called Yarrow Flasher who has something called Flashboards, and it looks pretty interesting. But I went with FreePik because they had been around for, well, years, even before the AI stuff started to happen. So I was like, okay, let me give that a shot. Now, when I did start working with it, I was like, oh, you know what, maybe I should have gone with Higgs field. But the reason I didn't go with Higgs field was because they seemed sneaky, like they weren't upfront about things, and it just didn't seem like they were on the up. So I didn't trust them, even though there's YouTube video after YouTube video about it. One of the things I heard was that they just pushed really hard to get YouTubers to cover them, which, that's not very trustworthy, is it? So anyway, I didn't go with Higgs field, but when I started using FreePik, I was like, maybe I should have used them both just to see what would happen. So I went back to Higgs field at this point just to look again. And again, they had changed all their pricing just in the short period of time between the first time I looked and the next time I looked. They were just constantly doing that kind of stuff. And I was like, never mind. I can't trust these guys. And part of the problem too was I was not going to pay for a year for something I wasn't sure about. And they had designed their pricing in such a way to make you want to do a year, because you could do a year pretty cheaply. But if you tried to do it for 1 month, it was, I don't know, $200 or something crazy. I was like, nah, screw that. So I went with FreePik because it was like $45 or something for that 1 month. And I just wanted to try it to make sure it would actually do what I wanted it to do before I went, forehead deep into it. So the next thing I did after that, I picked my thing and I hit YouTube and started looking at YouTubers who were using FreePik so I could get my head around how that worked. And they tell you how to do a character sheet in Nano Banana, and luckily FreePik's Nano Banana was unlimited because I had to do a lot of iterations to get it to do what I wanted it to do, more than even what I used to have to do in Comfy UI on my local machine. I was like, all right, well, it's unlimited, so I'll let it go. So eventually I got my character sheets together, and there was only 3 of them. You got the 2 girls in the car, and you have the guy in the office. And for the car, I just found a really nice one that was for sale that had a bunch of images from different angles, and I created a car character sheet from that. So far, so good, right? So one of the problems with Nano, or just this process in general, is it will do things that look really good, but when you want things really specific, you got to do a lot of renders, and I was getting tired of pressing the button. So I ended up just writing, and I'm sure it's against the terms of service, but I wrote a Chrome extension that would do a random time between 2 and 4 minutes, and then press the generate button for the Nano Banana to generate from my prompt. And by the way, my prompts, they're not bad. The prompts are not the problem. I've tried many, many different kinds of prompts, and I've been doing prompts for several years anyway, so it's not like I have a deficiency in that area. It's just I want something specific. And it'll do things that are almost there, but just not quite. And then when you try to correct it, it'll mess something else up. And so it's like whack-a-mole, taffy pull. Another reason why I wanted to do it that way and try to get as close as possible is because you can take the image that's close and then use it as a reference again and get it to correct things. But I found that the quality seemed to go down when I did that. It was almost like it was continuing to introduce new quality issues. It's almost like the old days, which I'm kind of dating myself here, but the old days where we used to copy cassettes from people. And every time you would copy a cassette, like I would copy a cassette from my friend, and then a friend of mine would copy my cassette, and then one of his friends would copy his cassette, somewhere down the line, the quality would be so bad, it was, not even worth doing anymore. It was almost like that, because I would have ringing in the trees and the sharpening artifacts and things like that. And I didn't know how to get around it. And I couldn't even, help from Claude and stuff like that. It's just, why are these artifacts in my image? And what I ended up doing at one point for one of them, it just couldn't get it. I just went straight to Google Pro, or Google's Nano Pro version, and just rendered it from that. And then the quality was better. Now, once I got to the hallway and the office thing with the line down the middle, yeah, that wasn't happening. It just wasn't going to happen, period. I had to take my renders and get the camera in the right place for each one so that I could take those into Photoshop and basically make my own, and then put it back in there and tell it what this was, and to enhance it with, a little doorknob and whatnot. And I had to leave that on all night with my Chrome extension for it to get me something that I could use. But the quality still is not where I want it to be. But again, I'm just trying to get to a point, trying to figure out if this stuff is even going to work at all. So I'm like, all right, fine. I'll just accept the quality for now. I'll figure out later why the quality is not great. Because this is definitely worse than what I would get with my own rendering that I did on my own machine with my 3090 card through Flux or something. So the next order of business was to try to get a render of video. I tried a couple of prompts just to see what would happen, and it just wasn't going to follow what I gave it, no matter what kind of prompting I did, whether I enhanced it with AI, whether I followed the patterns that people talk about for Seadance. And by the way, I was doing it on Seadance at first. It just wasn't going to follow. For example, the very first shot is just the shot of the alley, which I finally got. I had the shot of the alley. The camera's supposed to be sitting there, and the car is supposed to come from camera right into the scene and stop. That's it. There's nothing else for it to do, and it could not get it. It would come in sliding sideways, or come from the other direction, or come from the wrong side of the camera. Or when it did come in from the right side of the camera, it would drive up on the grass and drive, it wouldn't stay on the road. It was just all kinds of craziness. I'm like, how hard is this? And so I went into Blender and created the scene with a dummy car. So I was thinking, okay, I can show it what I'm doing using a dummy car to give it the exact thing that I want. I just want you to recreate this except with these images, kind of thing, right? And I couldn't get it to do that. I'm sure I was doing something wrong, because later I saw that Yarrow Flasher was doing something very similar, and he was getting it to work. So there's something missing. Maybe it's FreePik, because Yarrow Flasher uses his own flash boards to do this stuff. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just look for Yarrow Flasher. He does a really good job. And he also has a few videos where he shows all the tries he did on things and how it wouldn't work, which further proves what I am coming to believe, which is AI works great as long as you accept what it gives you and you work around it. I don't want to do that. I want to direct it. I'm a filmmaker. I direct things. I have a vision of what I want. If you don't have a vision, but you kind of know generally what you want, it might work perfectly. But if you have a strong vision for what you want, good luck, man. Anyway, the thing with Blender didn't work. What ended up working, and this just goes to show that there was a learning curve, and I just didn't know about this. But there's the start frame and the end frame, and I bet you there's some of you guys out there watching nodding your head right now. It's like, of course, man, that's what you're supposed to do. So I rendered, well, I already had the start frame, which was no car was in the shot. What I needed was an end frame with the car where I wanted it in the shot. So I had to go back to Nano Banana and let it run all night to get the car exactly where I wanted it. I didn't want it on the grass. I didn't want it facing the other direction. I didn't want it whatever kind of crap that Nano thought that it wanted to do. I wanted exactly what I wanted, and it eventually got it. And it's like, cool, all right. When I put the first and last frame and then did my prompt and explained what I wanted, it got it. was like, all right, that was easy once I figured that part out. The quality still sucks, but I now know that the first and last image thing was the way to go. So what I did next, knowing that, was like, I wonder, it's not going to be able to get those in-between things. I wonder if I could use first, last image and a Blender video. Let me try that. So I did. I created that move I talked about where it's looking at them in the car, and then she gets out and she walks and it follows her, and then it goes up the side of the building. I created that shot right here. As you can see, this is what I wanted. And I had read somewhere, or maybe Claude told me or something, that I should make it as simple as possible. Don't try to make it look like exactly like the things I want, or it might confuse it. It's like, okay, that kind of makes sense. I'll just make really basic dummy things to take the positions of the things I want moving around. I did that. I did the first and the last image, and then I set to work rendering. And that took the rest of my credits, and I never got it to work. Now, this is 40,000 credits at the time that FreePik gave you. And to get this shot took the rest of them. And here's the shot that eventually at least had it walking towards the building, and it's still not correct, walking behind the car, and it's got the other girl starting to get out, and she's not supposed to get out. So it was unusable. It's just unusable. I'm sure if you had some, generic way you wanted things to work, it might work for you, but it wasn't going to work for me. I had something specific, and so I gave up on that. Now, for the most part, a lot of this is probably not FreePik's fault, although I have some suspicions. I don't think it's entirely FreePik's fault. But the UI is hokey. But the UI would just do things like glitch out, and then I'd lose everything. I don't know where they're storing this stuff. Must be local cache or something. And so I'd have to set it all back up again. Just stuff like that. That was irritating. Sometimes the prompt box would become unresponsive. Part of the thing with using AI for this stuff is I don't think it has an understanding of spatial geography or cinematic space, and we need this. And I've heard that there's some stuff, NAB has happened, and now some stuff has been presented to maybe solve some of these things, and we'll see what happens. I mean, stuff is changing all over the place all the time. Even FreePik, since I did this, has changed its name and is now some other company that I don't even remember the name of. But the thing that you have to be good at as a director is understanding this cinematic space. And that's knowing where to put the camera and how to move the camera around and how to move the objects around that's in front of the camera. And the best directors are the ones that they're editing in their heads as they're going along. Some of you may have heard of this. I'm calling it what I'm calling it, but technically it's referred to as the 180 degree rule. I'm sure you've heard of it if you've done any kind of filmmaking to any degree. This is a skill. You really got to build up the skill and or have a strong knack for it, because it is an art form unto itself. Because if you don't, then the editor is going to have a hell of a time trying to piece together what you shot, where you were sticking the camera in all kinds of random places. And I've seen this a lot. And AI seems to do the same thing. So whenever you go and you start generating all these images, and you can see it when you go watch people's AI films too, the camera just seems to jump around some, or people end up coming from weird directions and stuff like that. It's because there's no spatial awareness. And I don't know. I mean, I am seeing this more and more, even with just younger filmmakers or just newer filmmakers. They seem to be not getting their heads wrapped around this concept. Maybe they're just not good at it. I mean, not everybody's good at it. And in some cases, maybe they just don't give a shit. They're just doing what they want to do. Or maybe they think they can be like the great filmmaker Ozu, the Japanese filmmaker. I mean, that dude had a knack and an understanding that was beyond most people, because he didn't follow the 180 degree rule. If you watch any of his movies, you don't get lost watching his movie. You always kind of get a sense of where you are and what's going on. And yet he will stick the camera in the most odd, cut around 180-degree breaking, rule breaking, and it still works. It still flows. There's a flow to it. And that's part of the thing that I'm getting to. There's a flow to these things. It's more than just the 180 over the shoulder, two people talking kind of stuff. And it's amazing to see how he crafted those things. I don't even know how he did it. So anyway, needless to say, I stopped using FreePik. I mean, I ran out of credits and I wasn't going to buy some more to continue down this thing, knocking my head against it. But I've got a better idea of what's going on. So the first and last frames, for sure, I need to watch the Yarrow Flasher stuff some more to see how he's using Blender to control the camera. Maybe I'll even give his tool a try just to see how it works. But ultimately, I think I'm going to go back to Comfy UI because there's a lot more control to be had with that tool. I mean, even if there's not something to give me what I want, I can just write it with Python myself. But we'll see. I mean, I tried to get cheap and lazy about it and it didn't work. So what I'm going to do is another video. I'll stop here since I didn't really get any further than this car video of them pulling in. And we'll see what happens with the next installment of this. I am determined to get this scene done entirely with AI because I just want to see if it can be done. Now, one of the reasons why I even tried this in the first place has to do with some thoughts I have on the subject of AI and creativity, which you can watch either right here or here, wherever I end up putting the video. Go check that out, and I'll see you in the next one.